The human mind, can it be controlled by someone else to perform acts against the will of the individual?
Shoot Bobby Red. Through the forehead.
Yes, ma'am.
Is control of the human being, such as the Manchurian Candidate, possible?
We are not professing to tell you the complete story of these activities. We are professing to tell you the complete story that we know.
Right.
But these records that we've uncovered don't tell the story. They tell pieces of it.
This is a story that has been told in bits and pieces over the last few years. This is an attempt to pull most of it together. We know we don't have the full story. We do, however, have some striking new revelations and insights. It is a story of a concerted search by several United States intelligence agencies to perfect mind control. In 1953, at the height of the Cold War, President Eisenhower appointed Allen Dulles to be head of the CIA, the first peacetime intelligence agency in United States history. And as it had during OSS days, the search for mind control continued. As this 1952 CIA document shows, the aim at that time was controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation. But it was a discovery here in Basel, Switzerland, at Sandoz Laboratories by Dr. Albert Hoffman that led the intelligence agencies of America to believe that they had found the panacea. The discovery was lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD.
It was one of the first times that anybody had run into a powerful drug that was different than anything else that they knew anything about.
John Gittinger, recently retired chief psychologist for the CIA. This is the first time Gittinger has been interviewed publicly.
Could, in effect, disable a whole city by putting a very small amount in a water supply.
It would not be long before the CIA and other intelligence agencies discovered that LSD was not only powerful, but dangerous. A former CIA official who worked on these programs did not wish to be filmed or recorded. The statements he made to ABC consultant John Marks will be read by someone else. They have been corroborated by ABC News. He tells what happened to one co-worker when LSD was put into his coffee in this Washington office building. The LSD took hold and he ran to the street, as illustrated here.
He sort of knew he had it, but he couldn't pull himself together, and it got away from him. He reported afterwards that every automobile that came by was a terrible monster with fantastic eyes, out to get him personally. It was a real horror trip for him. It was hours of agony. It was like a dream that never stops with someone chasing you. It was awfully hard to persuade him that his friends were his friends at that point. He was alone in the world, and everyone was hostile. He had become a full-blown paranoid.
The CIA's interest in LSD was intense. The worry was that the Russians would get hold of it. Were the Soviets into LSD?
I'm going to have to say I'm sure they were, but if you ask me to prove it, I've never seen any direct proof of it.
But at one point, intelligence information received from Switzerland said that Sandoz Laboratories was about to put 100 million doses of LSD on the open market. And it caused enough concern within the agency that the United States was prepared to buy the entire supply. However, a slight mistake had been made.
I just found out on a new CIA document
that there were no such large quantities of LSD on the market.
Author John Marks has filed numerous Freedom of Information suits against the CIA and has unearthed much new material in this field. He is the author of the forthcoming book, The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, a history of OSS and CIA work with mind control. He is also a consultant for this report.
What happened is that there was a military attaché in Switzerland, an American officer, who got milligrams and kilograms mixed up. In other words, he made a mistake of thinking 1/1000th of a gram was the same as 1,000 grams, which is a mistake of 1,000,000 times. So when the CIA got the intelligence that there were 100 million doses on the market, in fact, there were 100 doses.
The man who would oversee the CIA's research into drugs in most of the agency's behavior programs is this man, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist. Dr. Gottlieb declined ABC News' request for an interview.
I recently received a document from the CIA which described Dr. Gottlieb's role in carrying LSD overseas during the early 1950s to slip to a foreign political leader just before he was supposed to give a speech. The hope was that the man would discredit himself in front of his followers. Dr. Gottlieb continued to personally carry drugs overseas for the CIA, all during the 50s and early 60s.
In their never-ending search for the miracle weapon, CIA operatives would search here in the remote mountain areas of southern Mexico for what up to then had been considered a myth, magic mushrooms. They would use this man, a part-time chemist for the CIA, to dupe this man, a vice president of a bank, and an amateur mycologist or mushroom expert, to try to get to the magic mushrooms and turn them into a drug.
They didn't know about it?
But it would be the amateur, R. Gordon Wasson and his colleagues, who would win the race.
That's no record left.
It would be Wasson who would discover the magic mushrooms were no myth.
We went into the Mazatec area, far from the highways, remote from Mexico City. There we found that rotten bagasse, as it's called, bagasso, covered with mushrooms. These mushrooms I didn't know, had never seen. They were the sacred mushrooms.
Wasson would also discover and record the ancient mystical rites of the mushrooms from a local shaman or magical priestess, Maria Sabina.
There we found her, and we found her daughter, Apollonia. They were delighted with the mushrooms, that freshness. They went into ecstasy. It was a thrilling night. Maria Sabina allocated to each one of us the mushrooms that we were to eat. Maria Sabina was silent, then she broke into humming, and then she began singing. She sang for 4 hours. And we were seeing incredible sights. They would go slowly or they would go fast as I ordained. All your senses are rendered acute. We say that you see visions, you see hallucinations, but that doesn't begin to tell the story. The hallucinations are only part of it. You hear sound, you smell things. The night was thrilling.
This was the first known mushroom trip by outsiders, was it not?
The first known trip by outsiders. First known trip. There's nothing in any record.
Word of Wasson's discovery reached the CIA quickly.
Century.
Dr. James Moore, a chemist at the University of Delaware and secretly a full-service agent for the CIA, was a specialist in preparing deadly chemicals on short notice for the agency. Moore was instructed to contact Wasson and to pay to accompany him on another trip to Mexico to get the magic mushrooms. For as agency documents show, the CIA felt it's quite possible that a drug derived from the mushrooms could remain an agency secret. What in the world were they looking for with the magic mushrooms?
I think the best answer to that is that they were looking for fundamental information new information as fast as it became available. They wanted it as rapidly as it became available on compounds.